First Sergeant Kep here with Company D, 2nd United States Sharpshooters. And today I thought I would do a nice quick book review and share a wonderful research resource for you. With the pandemic, a lot of our events have been canceled, and so we're spending a lot more time at home, which means we have a bigger opportunity to kind of revisit the books, do a little bit more research, refresh a few new facts and figures about the Civil War, and find new ways to better inform and improve our impression and our immersion at events. And the book I want to share with you today is called The Revised Regulations for the Army of the United States, 1861. And this book is, I think I only paid like $25 for it on Amazon. It's obviously a reprint. The original copies are around the $500 range, which is pretty high right now. But you can get a reprint from Amazon, and it has tons of resources in it. We get lots of questions about uniform regulations, sort of military customs and courtesies, but we also get a lot of questions about military clerking and Civil War paperwork, which is so awesome to hear more reenactors learning and wanting to embrace the burden of Civil War paperwork, because it was a reality, and it's not shown enough in the hobby, and there are more and more people out there really wanting to get after it. And because officers and soldiers complained about paperwork during the Civil War then, and so how do we go about finding the right forms, and how do we find more information about what we're supposed to put on the forms? Because sometimes the forms are part of a series of forms, and sometimes forms reference tables from other regulations. So where can you find all that information? Well, this book will help you out with a lot of it. It has copies of dozens and dozens and dozens of forms, everything from medical to quartermaster to inventory and feed and forage. It has pay tables and the weight of bulk items. It has things commonly held in inventory. So let's see what else is in this book. We'll kind of go through, I'll hit some of the high points of the table of contents, but it is by no means exhaustive. So we have, it starts out with military discipline, rank and command, succession and commander duty, sort of officer promotions, resignations, what to do when someone's discharged. It talks about military courts. It talks about distribution of the troops, appointments of staff, care of fortifications. There are a few of you units out there that do fortification work. Artillery practice, regiments, sort of a little bit on different ranks, traveling on duty, leaves of absence. We've had some wonderful questions about military passes, and just like today, in the Civil War, they had passes for everything. Sometimes they had formal versions of those passes, and then sometimes, a commanding officer would just write a note on a piece of paper just so you wouldn't be arrested for desertion. Furloughs to enlisted men, chaplains, sutlers, arrests and confinements, hours of service and roll calls. That question comes up every once in a while. Honors to be paid by the troops, inspection of the troops, musters, forms of parade, guards, orders and correspondence, returns and reports, troops and campaigns, courts martial, working parties, recruiting service, public property, money and accounts, quartermaster's department, sustenance department, medical department, pay department, Corps of Engineers and topographical engineers, ordnance department, proceedings in civil courts, arms of the United States, flags, colors, standards, and guidons, uniform dress and horse equipments, and volunteers and militia in the service of the United States, as well as sort of your bread and butter stuff like the Articles of War, which were required to be read to soldiers. So we get questions all the time about uniform regulations, and there's also a lot of us out there that know the uniform regulations, but still, every once in a while you run into somebody who wants to wear what they want to wear, and they don't understand that they're not supposed to wear that, right? Because this isn't like a cosplay thing. This is a military reenactment, and because of that, you need documentation. You had government regulations and standards that soldiers were held to, and you do have variances during the Civil War that are documented. So we're sharpshooters, and we have tons of weird things that we did with our uniforms, but we have that. We follow those impressions based on written documentation and photographic evidence. And if it's just super obscure, then we kind of stay away from it, because you don't want to be the weird standout guy. But the whole idea is that uniform regulations were a thing. And I think I have just the uniform regulations posted on our website. It's maybe only like 12 pages. But they have it in this book starting on page 476. And so it talks about what to wear for commissioned officers, for enlisted men. It talks about it talks about a frock coat. The uniform coat for all enlisted footmen shall be a single-breasted frock of dark blue cloth, made without pleats, with a skirt extending 1/2 the distance from the top of the hip to the bend of the knee. 1 row of 9 buttons on the breast, placed at equal distances, and it goes on. So one useful thing about that is, if you've never had a frock made before, this tells you how long that skirt should be. Or if you, say, buy a used one or one that isn't trimmed, that you know sort of the regulation length that it should be trimmed to. It talks about, musicians, what to wear for fatigue purposes. A sack coat of dark blue flannel extending halfway down the thigh and made loose without sleeve or body lining. Falling collar, inside pocket on the left side, 4 coat buttons down the front. Talks about different types of buttons. Talks about different types of trousers. Talks about different types of hats and trimmings. Wearing cravats or stocks for all officers, black. When a cravat is worn, the tie not to be visible at the opening of the collar. I like this because it's so incredibly Victorian that they expect you to be very formal, even if you don't see it. Because if you have, you have the standing collar on your frock coat, it's going to be, your tie is going to be hidden a little bit. It talks about different types of boots, sashes, swords, sword belts, different belt plates, badges and ranks, shoulder straps, overcoats, chevrons, tents, horse furniture, other articles of clothing and equipment. The list goes on. I mean, this section answers a lot of questions. But the other thing we get is, what about forms? So there's a big section in here for medical forms, and so for those of you in the medical departments out there, there's all your sort of paperwork resources in here. And let's see, that's interesting. I've had this book for a really long time, and I'm still finding stuff. Talks about some ration stuff, consolidated provision report. So here's, get you a little bit of a close up there. Some of that. And quarterly return of clothing, camp and garrison equipage received and issued. Right there. I think they have the ammunition one in here too. Pay tables, rations that are issued, damaged articles. There's a form here, number 36, requisition for straw. So it's got lots of stuff for animals. different vouchers, contract forms, hiring different trades people, did contracts, accounts, working parties. Yeah, so there are, a big chunk of the center section of this book are just different forms. It talks about items that would be commonly held in storage for different trades and departments. So if you're interested about sort of like your supplies, a lot of people like to do trades impressions, and this can kind of give you an idea of sort of the common inventory that would be found in the military. So here's a list of prices of different things. So this is a handy resource. Now, the forms in here aren't the proper size. So if you wanted to just get started, you could just, scan and copy these forms. But Civil War paper came in different sizes. The most common form, I think, is the old government standard page size, and I'm probably going to be a little bit off. I want to say it was like 8 by 10.5 or 8.5 by 10, one of those two. It's not like the common 8.5 by 11. Some of the forms will be on that smaller size paper. Some other forms will be on longer pieces of paper, and then you have like some of the like monthly returns. They'll be on like these really giant pieces of paper. So you can do a little bit of research on the forms. I do kind of collect original Civil War forms on the side. So I have, I probably have, a little over half a dozen, I think, that I've collected over the years. And I have some information about those on our website at secondusss.com if you want to check that out. I'm pretty sure I measured it. If not, just let me know and I'll let you know how big that particular form was. But what's interesting is most of those forms, they all fold up into like a pamphlet size. So that's also kind of a neat thing that they were able to kind of keep them handy. And there are places that reproduce a good number of the forms. But the thing is, with these forms and even the originals, you can recreate almost all of these in Microsoft Word. The ones with tables, it's better to use Excel. And all the fonts are in there. You can mess around with like the scale a little bit. And then you can even customize those forms to your specific needs and your specific unit. I know on one inventory form, I modified it so that it had the 2nd US's actual quartermaster on the bottom of the form, for example. So there are lots of different opportunities and possibilities for you to pursue in this research paperwork impression as you move forward. So that is my review. I highly recommend this fantastic resource. Let us know down in the comments if there are other great resources that you would like to share out there. And as always, thanks for liking and subscribing, and we'll see you next time.